Hello, it's Andryanna, and welcome back to The Juggle is Real. Are you addicted to drama? That that little clickbait, my friend. I don't know. Did that insult you? Did you feel like, oh, is that triggering a little bit if I say that you could be addicted to the drama or in a bit of a chaos loop? Now, if it did hit a nerve, I want you to keep listening because in this episode, we're talking about these things that so many of us fall into without even realizing it, being addicted to this feeling, this busyness, this chaos. And whether it's the constant doing, the problem solving, or the need to be everything to everyone and be the fixer, it can start to feel normal even when it's draining every last little bit of your energy and you're left with nothing for yourself. So, if that's sort of how you're feeling, or you can find these tendencies, I want you to listen in because today I'm joined by Kim Rogne, who is a certified health performance coach, a keynote speaker, bestselling author, and all around powerhouse who had to learn firsthand what happens when life forces you to slow down. She did have a traumatic accident and she went from always being on the go to stuck in stillness. And that is when she discovered that time and slowing down is so powerful. So today we are diving into how to recognize that pull towards chaos, what it looks like to step out of it, and how to realign with your values in a way that feels real and doable. I know you can't pause life totally. And even enduring, life's busiest seasons, you can still slow down. So if you feel like you're running on fumes, but you're just barely holding it together, this episode is going to be your permission slip to pause. Let's dive right in.
This is the Juggle is Real podcast. I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started.
Kim Rogne, welcome to The Juggle is Real. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I think we're going to help a lot of people. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Andryanna, for having me. It's a true blessing to be here, and I'm super excited.
I want to get right into it. I want to start with the drama because I know for myself, I've kind of worked through some of these tendencies. I can recognize it in myself a little bit better now. I know a lot of people who are kind of in this loop of drama and chaos and busyness. And I think that we can be so supported when we realize this. So, what does it mean to be addicted to drama or chaos or busyness? And why do you think so many women, especially moms, are constantly living in that state of drama and overdrive?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'm a woman. I have two daughters. We're naturally kind of dramatic to begin with. I'm Italian. I speak with my hands, so there's that part. But when I think about being a working mom and a woman entrepreneur, first of all, I think of drama and chaos really being about problem solving, being in the
Mm,
know. I can very clearly remember when I was in a CEO position where I felt fulfilled when I could check the box, if you will, on solving the problem.
mhm.
And sometimes interjecting myself to solve a problem when I wasn't asked. I'm also a natural problem solver as a coach. I've had to train myself to ask questions versus just solving. And so I think sometimes we can get caught up in that chaos loop because let's be honest, we're human and it does make us feel good. It makes us feel good when we can be a part of it, when we can problem solve, but it also can become an addiction. And I
Mhm.
clearly remember being addicted to what I would call more chaos in the sense of constantly having to be involved and working like so many hours to constantly be the only person solving the problem, if you will. And so that's what I went through. And what I see in a lot of women when I'm coaching them is the natural addiction of having to be the one, the only one to always solve all the problems.
I couldn't agree more. And I was doing a little bit of research actually because I knew we were having this conversation. And it's so interesting because this chronic stress, this overstimulation, this addiction to the chaos, it becomes neurologically addictive from like a scientific perspective because we have these frequent surges of cortisol and adrenaline rush, and the brain can then begin to crave these states. Even though we know it's not really great for us, it can be harmful, and it can show up in different ways, through our bodies and the ways that it tells us like you shouldn't be doing this, right? So how can we recognize it in ourselves if we are kind of stuck in this loop? What would be some telltale signs, or how can we recognize it and be like, okay, now I am aware?
That's so good. And it is. It's like a natural dopamine hit, right? When you talk about
Mm-hmm.
neurologically how it affects us. First of all, probably we're not going to like hearing this, but when I was addicted to the chaos, the only way that I knew that I was when I actually slowed down because I
Mm-hmm.
felt off. I felt like, what am I doing? Shouldn't I be doing something? Shouldn't I be moving? Shouldn't I be fixing? Shouldn't I be solving? And so it does actually take time because it is an addiction. So if you think about any sort of addiction, it's almost like you have to go through this transformation. You have to go through the pain of not being on all the time. So that's first of all, it's slowing down. I call it the slow down to speed up. We have to slow ourselves down, our nervous system down, breathing, just being without anything in our hands, whether we're solving, through email or we're solving through a text, before we can actually realize what it feels like, if that makes sense. It's feeling. Like most of the time we're running around working and doing things that we're not even taking a moment to feel it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And, feeling from that perspective, I think it often shows up in relationships, like you were saying, like we feel responsible for everyone. We feel like we have to solve the problems, or we feel like we have to be this emotional dumping ground, whether it's with our friends or, our relationships with our children at work. We like to be the go-to person. And this was like 100% me. And I can remember even after my wedding, and I was very much addicted to all of that, right? Like I wanted to be the first person to message back in our group chats, and I would always make sure that I didn't have one email by the end of the day. Like everything had to be done. And I can remember going to a spa where it was like hot and cold therapy, where you're supposed to be relaxing. You're in a sauna, you're in a hot tub, and then you're doing a cold plunge, and then you have this rest period. And they would give you these times like, like maybe do 10 minutes in the sauna and then do a quick cold plunge and then 15 minutes of rest. And I can remember like timing it out and planning with my brand new husband, being like, okay, we've got to go to this sauna. Then we're taking 8 minutes here. We're going to do 12 minutes at that one. And it was just like, even in the place where we're supposed to slow down, regulate our nervous system, for some of us, when we are on that overdrive mode, it can be really difficult, and it can actually feel boring. Those states of
Mm.
calm, it can feel like painful almost because we're used to this high pace. So I would love to know your thoughts on how we can actually slow down and work through that discomfort. And then after that, I want to talk about your accident. So what would you say first about this slowing down process and how we can do that?
That is such a great question. The first thing is to start with the daily. So think about throughout your day. It doesn't need to be huge, even if it's 10 minutes, because we have to slowly then suddenly train ourselves, right? It's like when we're building a new habit, it's not, let's just say you were creating a habit of or even just you wanted to run a marathon. Like you're not going to run a marathon today, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the
Mm-hmm.
same with the slowdown. So I will actually coach a lot of my clients to what could you do throughout the day that gives you just 10 minutes. Now, if it's not on your schedule, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're a high performer, you're in a CEO position, you're living a very busy life, it's not going to exist. So we
Right.
literally have to start with teeny tiny daily schedule, the 10 minutes. And whether that's breathing, whether that's putting your phone down, here's one for you. How about having lunch, not at your desk, away from
Mm-hmm.
your desk? And how about you have lunch? We just start with 15 minutes, then 20, and work ourselves up to 30 without a device. Like that alone is a way to start. So just teeny tiny. I always say start with the daily because then it's easier to do the more purposeful, longer time frames. Maybe you're taking a Saturday and you're taking an hour, right, to yourself to maybe journal or be in nature or be in peace. But we got to start really small, especially if we're not used to it. And so whether it's scheduling it, setting a timer is another little technique. I will teach a lot of my clients, what if you were to set a timer for 45 minutes or 90 minutes after you're in the flow, so that when the timer goes off to remind you, okay, now I need to go take my 10 minutes. And so that's just a simple, tiny little technique that can make a huge difference.
It's like acclimatizing to it, right? Like I
Yeah,
think it's
that's
it's
so
it's a
good.
really great way of seeing it. And I appreciate that it is taking small steps, like not like a giant, huge change all at once. But on that note, that is sort of what happened to you. And in the introduction,
Yes.
I kind of alluded to you having this skiing accident and it forced you to slow down. So it was so I will say like the whispers will turn to screams, and sometimes we are given our own blessings in ways that maybe we didn't anticipate, or ways that aren't as welcoming as we would like it to be. So talk to me about this huge life change, this big pivot with your accident, how it forced you to slow down, what you learned during this period that's changed how you live and lead your life today.
Yeah, so I do come from a background of being in the real estate space for 25 years. So the first 15 years I was in sales, and anybody who's listening is who's in that type of career, it is 7 days a week. You are 100% responsible for your income. The
Mm-hmm.
last 10 years, I was in a CEO position, running very large multi-million dollar brokerages where I was leading a staff of 6. I was reporting to the investors and coaching and leading upwards of 180 real estate
Wow.
agents. So probably working, 50, 60 hours a week, being there as the problem solver all the time, being there. Hey, you got a minute, sit down in my chair, let me walk you through it, talk you through it, coach you so you can live your beautiful best life. So it was 4 years ago now. I was out skiing in Breckenridge, Colorado with my groom of 27 years. That could be a whole podcast in itself. How did we get to that point? And my youngest daughter at that time, we were skiing. And unfortunately, we were only about an hour and a half in, and I fell, and it was in normal fashion. Mom's down. My youngest daughter even was Snapchatting her oldest sister who was not there. Hey, mom's down. Ha 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 ha. But mom was not getting back up. And I ended up breaking my tibia, my fibia,
Ouch.
and fractured my ankle. So I had to be taken off the mountain on, a toboggan, had drugs on the mountain, all these sorts of things, and left with rods and screws and, you know, made it home safely, right? I'm alive. But what had happened is just that. I was forced to slow down when I hadn't slowed down for 25 years. So when I'm in this slowdown, very antsy, not sure what to do with myself. I mean, my gosh, I even got coloring books. I was like, I'm going to color and I'm going to do these things. And then eventually it kind of settled in. It probably took me a couple of weeks. And I was doing some reflecting and knocking on the door of 50. I am not going to lie, when they talk about women in general, when they go through perimenopause, menopause, and the whole like, oh, my kids are now going to be semi-adulting and going to college, and what am I actually doing with my life? That is true. That is what happens. And that's what was happening to me. And I had then gone back to work after this 10 weeks of no weight bearing, all this jazz. And I was going to go full fledged. I was like, I'm going to go build this company. And I was about 2 months into that, 3 months into that. And then all of a sudden it hit me. I mean, it took a really long time for it to hit me. And I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And I gave a 2 month notice and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I just knew, lucky for me, I had a supportive spouse. I sat down, I said, hey, listen, I think I want to go start my own personal and professional development company. I've always wanted to do this. It's what I've been doing, but now I want to do it full time. I want to make it my own baby. Would you support me? And luckily for him, he was willing to support me. I also knew I didn't have a plan B. So I did rip the Band-Aid. I did start my company January 1 of 2023. And I knew I had to make it work because of the lifestyle that we built and kids in college. But what I did during the forced slowdown, which I didn't recognize till afterwards, is I forgot who I was and I forgot who my strengths were and what I liked to do. And
Mhm.
I dug out every single strength finder I had taken through the last, whatever, 25 years as we do, whether it was DISC, Enneagram, strength finders. But what I did is I actually read them and felt them. And I know we're talking about feelings here, but I actually felt the words like, well, what does that mean to be a learner? What does that mean to be a high driver, a high D? Because a lot of times when we're reading these things about ourselves, we skim past them. We don't take the time to feel it. We're just like, yeah, 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 I know that's about me. And especially if you're high D, you're like, I ain't got time to read all that. And then I took all that information and I was like, okay, now what can I do with this? What can I do with what I'm naturally really good at that maybe I don't have to work and fight so hard at? And that's what I'm talking about when it was the forced slowdown and what I took away from it. And then here I am, running my own company and we're on year 3.
That's such a great way of looking at it because, yeah, I mean, when we talk about our identity, like so much of who you were or how you saw yourself was through the lens of, real estate and being a CEO. And for women especially, I think we really identify with our roles. I am a mom, I am a teacher, I am a wife, I am a nurse, whatever it is. And also we define our worth through our productivity, what we're doing, how we're being around people and the things that we're giving. So when it comes to being addicted and being in this
Hmm.
loop of chaos and busyness and that self-identification of like, I am the fixer, how do we then go into something more internal, more sustainable, where yes, sure, maybe we still have all these roles, but we don't have to necessarily be everything to everyone and find ourselves in this loop. You said for you, it was like looking at these different metrics and finding like what actually brings me joy, what are my strengths, what do I love, and then tapping into that. How can someone do this who's kind of in this, hamster wheel, if you will? How can we take that identification, remove it from whatever roles we're playing right now, and change it to, what we actually want to do, how we actually want to live our lives, how we want to move forward, regardless of, how far we are in our careers or how old our children are or what age we are. How do we shift that identity?
Yeah. And it's not easy. And we go through these phases. If I think about, now I'm 52 years old, when I was in my 20s and at that time we got married in our 20s and getting married, I became a different person. And we have all these seasons throughout our life. And I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but this is so true. It really isn't a slowdown. It really is taking a moment to ask yourself the question of what do I want, right? What
Mm-hmm.
do I what do I want to, when you mention joy, like what does bring me joy? And it may be different today than it was 20 years ago. There's no judgment, right? It's just I was coaching a client, and one of the questions that I ask, we kind of do this life arenas assessment where we look at the 10 areas in your life, and we look at your health and your mental health and your marriage and your relationships and your adventures and hobbies. And I always ask the question of, on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Where would you rank based on what you like to do, where your adventures and hobbies are? And she was like, I don't know, like a 5. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, what are adventures and hobbies to you? Because that doesn't mean you're jumping out of a plane. And she was like, oh, well, I like to read. And I'm like, she likes more of the solace and the calm. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm talking about, right? You get to decide. But the only way that we can discover that in ourselves, depending on the season that we are in, is if we ask ourselves those questions without comparison and judgment. Without comparison and judgment. And then we write it and we think about it and we think, okay, now how can I take that and actually go do something with it? And it doesn't need to be huge. It literally could be teeny tiny, like sitting and reading a book.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I love that. And I think it kind of ties into your PRP model. Can you talk to us about this? It stands for potential, reality, and perception. So, how can this model help women who are caught in that loop of saying yes to everything, trying to do it all, maybe lost in those identities and wanting to break free?
Yes, thank you. This is my favorite thing to talk about. So here's what happened January of 2023 when I started For the Love of. And For the Love of, a lot of times people will say to me, if I go to an event, they'll print out my name tag and they'll be like, oh, we're sorry, we must have missed a word. And I said, no, you didn't, because you get to fill in the blank. For the love of being a great mama, for the love of clarity, for the love of engagement, joy. And it's just a fun way to, have a company name. But anyway, when I started my business, one of the things that I committed to myself is I was going to do this thing that they who are all smarter than me, the high achiever, said works, which is journaling. And I always had been a inconsistent, consistent journaler, right? Whether it's you read Miracle Mornings or you do the Savers or you do Brendan Burchard's or, it doesn't really matter, right? They all have the journal prompts, or maybe you get out get a fresh notebook and you write in it. I had piles and piles of them. So I started doing this and I was about 3 weeks in and I had stole 3 journal prompts from a podcast I listened to. And I was like, I'm going to be committed to my mindset because I have to believe in the calm. I have to believe in the business. I have to believe that I can actually run a business that is not chaotic and full of drama. And I'm going to actually slow down and listen. And I had a girlfriend who had texted me and she said, hey, Kim, I'm looking to create a new habit. I'd really like to truly believe in myself and my health. And you're the only person that I can trust. I said, well, I don't know, girlfriend. I'm doing this thing. I'm doing this journal thing. I've committed to it. They all say it's going to work. I've never done it consistently. Why don't we do this? Why don't we journal and we'll send each other pictures? My friend Cindy was diagnosed with ALS in 2020. It is 2025. She is still alive. By all accounts, she should not be. And the way that she would send me her journal entries is she would look at an eye gaze, which is an iPad, and she would point to the letters with her eyes. So she's fully in a wheelchair. She can no longer speak, but she wanted to, in her core, have the perception of herself be that she's living her best life and that she is healing so that she could literally change the reality of herself, wanting to still be here on this planet for her spouse and her family and her son. And I started sharing her story. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I didn't start doing this 25 years ago. I'm like, it is working. She's changed the perception of herself. I'm changing it of myself because we know we cannot control our first thought, but we can certainly change our second thought. And when we change our second thought, then our reality in their world can change and we can fully hit our potential. It's basically who we are, what we do, and how we act. And that is how the whole PRP model was born, if that makes sense, because I was sharing her story and unsolicited Andryanna, unsolicited, people would send me their journal entries.
Wow.
And then that's where kind of it morphed. And I was like, I think I need to start talking about this. I think I need to build this model. I think I need to like create my own journal. But the only reason that that happened, if we rewind to the beginning on where we started, I believe that would not have happened if we were talking, 5 years ago. The only reason it happened now today is because I chose to slow down and actually listen and feel and be engaged and be confident to what was happening around me versus just walking through life and doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. A little bit more being, not just doing. And that's so
Yes.
so touching, that your friend is doing this and is still here with us. That's so so beautiful. And I got some goosebumps there as you were sharing that, which is it's just incredible, and the lives that you're supporting through this. So can you take me through this a little bit more? Share with me what For the Love of is, the different tools that can support people, and where we can find all of this.
Oh gosh, I can't wait. So, um, what had happened from this journey is I did then publish For the Love of Self, which is a journal and how you can change your mindset in 5 minutes a day, and did some research based on providing a system and journal prompts that you can write out every day to help you create change in the perception and the potential that you have of yourself. And so you can go get it on Amazon, or you can just go get the free download. So if you go to Flow Self, FLO Self, flowself.com, you can download it. You can go to page 16, and I actually provide you with the 3 parts that are in the journal, which is a weekly setup, your daily flow, and then the end of the week. Because we know when we set our week up with intention and purpose for our life, and then when we do our dailies, right, to battle our brains, as you talked about, our amygdala and all those things that are in our brain that are always our super fans, and then our end of the week. So you can have all those prompts and they will help you. And I just always challenge people because like I say, I was an consistent journaler, but try it. Just try it. Try it for 30 days and see if you notice a difference on how you're standing more taller and how you're feeling about yourself so that you can go reach your best life, so that you can fill in your for the love of, and then just fill in the blank.
This is great. We'll put the link in the notes for this episode as well, so everyone can go ahead and find that. Now, for yourself, as we're closing out, as we're looking to breaking free from this chaos loop, you're someone who has done this so beautifully. You've changed your roles. You're not as identified with, the drama and the chaos. And it's brought you to this beautiful place where you're leading with such purpose. You're supporting so many people. You're engaged in a career that's really fulfilling. But how is it that you're slowing down now? As a person who still wears many hats, and I'm sure the juggle is still real in your life with your daughters and your activities and supporting your clients. What is it that you do now to slow down on the daily,
Yeah.
periodically? How do you catch yourself maybe when you're going to head down that spiral and turn things around so that you can come back to yourself?
Yes, and the juggle is real. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that there's perfection here behind the screen. There is not. There is not at all. So definitely, yes, the daily journaling helps me. One. Two, as I mentioned before, I set a lot of timers throughout the day. A lot, a lot. Three, I now come from the mindset of less is more. I know that I am naturally a visionary and a starter, and I'm not always a finisher. I know that about myself. And I just know that, like, if I have an idea, whether it's a new program that we're putting into the business or a new coaching program or whatever, is I'm really staying committed to the process and allowing myself to get through it before I add another shiny or another thing. And then there are so many techniques that I'm doing right now that I didn't before, like really controlling how much I'm on social media, When we talk about even slowing down, it's setting the timers, putting your phone on grayscale, all those things that are in the technology world that are not built to support you because they're actually built to get you to come back, right? To control the dopamine and the addiction. I am just utilizing as many little trickles of tools as I can along the way. And then lastly, giving myself grace because life is a journey. Everything is a journey. And I have good days, I have bad days, I have Netflix binge days. But what I try not to do is have more than 2 days in a row, right? I can have one, but not two. And so those are just some of the tiny little things that I do to help me.
This is so great. I love how you're recognizing too, like the addiction to technology, something that I'm working on as well. And these little things that we can implement just help so much, as well as the timers and just really not expecting perfection from yourself, not
Yes.
putting so much pressure on yourself and allowing that space. And I think the more we can do this in small ways, the easier it becomes, the less boring it feels, the safer we can feel in the slowing down, and the more we can just start to enjoy and feel that purpose within our life. So I'm so grateful we had this conversation, Kim. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Before we close out, tell us what is next for you. Is it more slow down this summer, or is it ramping up to do some fun things? What's next for you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll definitely have slow down. I am in Wisconsin, as Andryanna here is in Canada. And so when we get warm weather, we have to soak it up. And so, yes, I'll be spending time with family and, going to concerts and enjoying our boat and all of that kind of stuff. And then, for my business is luckily I have a marketing manager who keeps me in check. And so I have given her permission to make sure that I stay focused on whatever we have decided is the priority for the quarter. So we set our priorities based on quarters, which I love because there's a beginning and an end. And so I try not to add any more on my plate there. But otherwise, I'm just doing my best to share Cindy's story, share my story, and bring people tools and systems so that they can go live their best for the love of.
Thank you so much. All of our love to Cindy and to you. And thank you so much for imparting us with all of these beautiful little nuggets so that we can live our best lives as well. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
This was such a great conversation, and I'm so grateful to Kim for joining me on the Juggle is Real, because I think it can be really easy to get wrapped up in the drama and people's lives and our own lives, and really just feel so drained and so overwhelmed. But if we really think about it, when we start to make these small changes, taking those pauses, not defining our worth based on how much we are producing or the roles that we are currently wearing. I mean, like Kim said, studies show that even 5 minutes of mindful breathing a day can lower your perceived stress, help your decision making, and really improve your life overall. So this is all just so easy, but so easy to also forget and brush off or feel like we're too busy to do these things and to stop. So I hope that you implement some of these beautiful tips and tools that Kim shared. The links in the notes for this episode do include For the Love of, the journal, and the free download. So definitely go check those out. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, can you share it with a friend, someone who might need to break free from the chaos loop as well? Write me a review on Apple Podcasts, help spread the word so that other people can find this podcast as well. And make sure you're subscribed. Come on back. We've got so many great episodes in store. And until then, take good care.